Alright, today's video is going to be a review for our second quiz for our first chapter. Let's start by reviewing how to solve absolute value equations. Remember, there's a difference between absolute value equations and absolute value inequalities. When you have an absolute value equation, you're going to set up two equations. You're going to drop the absolute value sign, so we're going to have 3x minus 5 is equal to, what we have there is a positive 4. And then we're going to set up 3x minus 5, and we're going to set that equal to a negative 4. Remember, this quantity inside that whole piece can end up being a positive 4 or a negative 4 because absolute value is always going to end up to be positive in the end. So we're going to move that 5 over to get 3x is equal to 9. Divide by 3 on both sides, and we find that x is equal to 3. That's one of our options. When I plug 3 in, I'm going to get a positive 4. Evaluate that to get a positive 4. Move the 5 over, we've got 3x is equal to 1. Negative 4 plus 5 gives you a positive 1. Divide by 3 and you find x is equal to 1/3. When you plug 1/3 back into the equation, inside of your absolute value bars, you're going to get a negative 4. But when you evaluate the absolute value of a negative 4, you end up with your positive 4 answer. And number 2, we are going to solve for the letter B. This should look familiar from your homework one night. So same thing set up, we're going to take negative a plus b, we're going to set it equal to what we're given, a positive a. Then we're going to do the equation again, and we're going to set it up to the opposite, which is a negative a. If I want to get b by itself, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that a over, so I add a to both sides, and we find that b is equal to 2a. And then we move a over again. A negative a and a positive a, those two things cancel out, so our second option is that b is equal to 0. Alright, after absolute value equations, let's move on to inequalities. We're going to start with this simple inequality, and we still have to solve for x, and I'm going to move the 2x over, because I want to make my x positive. So I've got 0 is less than x. X plus 2x gives us 3x. Plus 15, we're going to move the 15 over, so we've got a negative 15 is less than 3x. We divide by 3. We get a negative 5 is less than x. Now remember, you always want to rewrite it so that your variable comes first so that you can see which way your line is going to go. So when I flip this, instead of negative 5 is less than x, we're going to have x is greater than negative 5. When we look at this, we see that the big mouth of the less than sign is facing the x, so when we rewrite it, we want to make sure that the opening side is still facing the x. So this is a simple inequality. We've got one inequality. Negative 5 is to the left of 0 because it's smaller. Since we have a greater than symbol, it's an open circle, and we're going to follow the arrow. It's pointing to the right, so we're going to draw our arrow to the right. Number 4, now we've got a compound inequality, and this is actually an and remember that's a special and, it's called a range. Alright, so we want to get x by itself. We add 5. Now what's different about this is that we've got 3 pieces, so I've got to add 5 to the left, to the middle, and to the right. Negative 1 and 5 is 4. 4 is less than or equal to 4x, which is less than 3 plus 5 is 8. We divide by 4, which leaves us with 1 is less than or equal to x, which is less than 2. Hopefully you remember that with ranges, you're always going to have less than symbols. And this is the one exception where you don't have to have your 3 levels for a compound inequality. I know that my answer x is between 1 and 2, so those are the two numbers I'm going to put on my graph. I have a less than or equal to sign, that means closed circle, less than 2, which means open circle, and my answer is everything in between. If you want to show all 3 levels, that's fine. Remember that you're going to break this apart then. 1 is less than or equal to x, and x is less than 2, and then don't forget to flip this, x is greater than or equal to 1, and then you would have your 3 levels with this being your answer level, your third level. Number 5, We have two mini inequalities separated by the word or, so I want to go ahead and solve them separately. So I add the 4 over to get 5x is greater than 10, divide by 5 to find x is greater than 2. Bring down your or, and actually our second inequality is already solved for us, so we only had to solve one of them. We've got two inequalities, so we've got a compound separated by the word or, so this is an or compound inequality. We've got two numbers, 2 and -1. -1 is smaller, so it goes to the left of 2. Make sure that you have a true number line, that it's in order. Greater than 2 means open circle to the right, that's level 1. Less than -1, open circle at -1, arrow to the left. Now because we have an or statement, that means I want to combine everything from set 1 and everything from set 2 into one set. So in this case, since they don't share any numbers, all I have to do is recopy the two sets into one and make sure that you're copying and making that third level for full credit. Number 6, we've got an and statement this time. We're going to solve them separately. We move the 3 over to get -4x is greater than 12. Divide by a -4. Now since I'm dividing by a negative, we want to remember that that greater than sign is going to be flipped to a less than, -3. And then we divide our second one by 6, and we get x is greater than or equal to -4. Now notice the difference. In the first one we divided by a negative. In the second one there's a negative in the problem, but since we didn't divide by it, we're not going to flip the sign. It stays as is. So we've got a -3 and -4. -4 is smaller, so it goes to the left of -3. Open circle at -3 to the left. Close circle at -4 to the right. And in this case, we've got an and, which means we're looking for the overlap. What do they both share? What numbers do they both have in common? And that's all the numbers between a -4 and a -3. Open circle at -4, or close circle at -4, open circle at -3. Alright, and number 7. Notice we have 3 inequalities. So we're going to go ahead and start by graphing them. We've got 2, -1, and 0. So make sure that they're in the correct order. It comes -1, then we would hit 0, then we would hit 2. So I've got less than 2, that's open circle at 2, arrow to the left. Greater than or equal to -1, that's close circle to the right. And then our last one, greater than 0, open circle at 0, arrow to the right. Now the key here is that we have an and compound inequality, and that means where do they overlap? Normally we just have 2, but whether you have 3 or 4 or 5 inequalities, you're still just looking for what does and, what does or mean. And and means where are they overlapping? What do they all share? Well, here 2 of them share it, but I need all 3 to share those numbers. So I'm looking for where all 3 lines overlap each other. Not just where 2, but all 3 have to overlap because all 3 sets have to share that number. So all 3 sets share the numbers between 0 and 2. Here 2 of them share, here 2 of them share, but we need all 3 to share. So it would be between there. And in this case, since you have 3 inequalities, you would have 4 levels, your 4th letter being your solution set. Alright, on the back page, we've got another one of those 3 inequalities. So we've got 4, -7, -9. -9 is the smallest. Just make sure that you have them in the correct order. Greater than or equal to 4, that's close circle at 4 to the right. Greater than -7, open circle at -7 to the right. And less than -9, open circle at -9 to left. Our key word here is or, which means we want to have combining everything. If I'm going to combine everything, I want every number from this set, every number from this set, every number from that set, and I want to put them all into one set. So I'm combining everything together. Now our first set happens to be inside of our second set, so that one already accounts for all those numbers. So when I recopy everything, all of the numbers from every single set can be expressed in that solution set. Now we're going to combine the absolute value as well as the inequality. And remember, you look at the symbol to see if it's an and or an or. Less than means and, greater means or. So in this case, we are going to have an and compound inequality. So we've got 3x minus 1 is less than 8. And then our second one is 3x minus 1. We flip the sign to be greater, and then we change the positive 8 to a negative 8. Move the 1 over. 3x is less than 9. Divide by 3. X is less than 3. Move the 1 over. We get 3x is greater than negative 7. Divide by 3. X is greater than a negative 7/3. So our negative number is smaller. So the negative 7/3 goes to the left. 3 goes to the right. Less than 3 means open circle to the left. Greater than negative 7/3, open circle to the right. And once again we have our and, which is overlap. So we want all the numbers between negative 7/3 and a positive 3. Almost done with our review for our quiz. Couple word problems. Your closest friend lives 2 miles away from you, and your farthest friend lives 20 miles away. Write an equality that represents the various distances that your friends can live away from you. Hopefully by now this bell's going off. If your closest friend is 2 miles and your farthest friend is 20 miles, I've just given you a range of distances. So it can be anywhere between 2 and 20. So the number of miles can be anywhere in between, the lower bound being 2, the upper bound being 20. Now remember, since I have a range of values, I know that I have to have less than or equal to signs. So in this case, it can be 2 miles, so it's less than or equal to. It can be 20, so it's less than or equal to 20. If it couldn't be 2, then this would be less than. If it couldn't be 20, then this would be less than. I know it's kind of confusing because you always have less than symbols, but remember, if you break this apart, it's 2 is less than or equal to m, and when you flip that, it's m is greater than or equal to 2. And then bring down your second one, less than or equal to 20. So it's saying that the number of miles is greater than 2 and less than 20. So that's how you get your range. Last one. So for this one, all we want to do is translate the words into an inequality. So we've got 6 less than triple a number. So if I have 6 less than triple a number, this is not my inequality sign. If it was my inequality, I would say 6 is less than, but I want 6 less than. That means I'm taking away 6. Subtraction can be a little bit tricky. You want to make sure that you have it in the right order. So if I have triple number x, that's 3x. I'm taking away 6 from that, and now is greater than. That same number x increased by 10. So if I want that same number increased by 10, it's x plus 10. And on your quiz, all you have to do is do this straight translation. You don't have to solve for x. All I want to see is that you know how to correctly translate words into the proper representation and mathematical symbols. Alright, hopefully that was a quick refresher for you and you've got everything correct and ready for your quiz tomorrow.